All righty, welcome everybody. It is Tuesday afternoon. Got another ReiUnite show for you guys. You got a special guest, Sean O'Rourke. Sean joins us from Mississippi, and we have actually a common circle of networking friends. So that's how we connected. We've actually never officially met in person, so this is the first time.
Yeah.
But Sean, you got a lot of cool things going on. You seem like a stand-up guy. And then we were talking last week about how you're wholesaling the hedge funds. I was like, listen, you got to tell me more, and it would make a great show for our listeners. So hey, I appreciate you being on, taking time out of your busy schedule today, and we'll just dive in. So Sean, again, thank you for being on. Why don't you just tell our listeners briefly, how'd you get involved in real estate?
Yeah. So, man, I really appreciate you allowing me to come on here, man. It's always good to connect with good people. So I got started basically because I was in a 9-to-5. It was just I made good money, but my bills were set to 9-to-5, and so I was paycheck to paycheck. And I really just wanted something different. I was tired of hating my job and the everyday rat race of trying to be successful for somebody else instead of being successful for myself. And so, I got into real estate, not really knowing about real estate. Transactional wise, I knew that real estate's a good opportunity just because of just hearing other people. But, I kind of stuck my toe in the sand, and what happened was it just kind of quicksand just pulled me in fast. It was crazy. And it was because I realized I could make a bunch of money really fast without spending a whole bunch of money wholesaling. And so, I started out wholesaling. I did 36 deals. I think my first year made over 300 grand. And I was doing that part-time. I had a full-time family. I got 4 kids, a wife, full-time job. And so I was doing that on the side, and I was like, holy crap, this is crazy. And so I started buying rentals on my own as well. So I knew at that point, I was like, I've got to do something because taxes are about to eat me alive. And there's a whole lot behind all this, but taxes are going to eat me alive. So I had to buy some type of asset that was going to depreciate. And so I started buying rentals and met up with my business partners now and went full-time into various different types of real estate. So anything from currently, we'll buy anything commercial, residential, single family, multifamily, mobile home parks, the whole gamut. So at this point, I like to diversify and own multiple different types of portfolios. But I also still have to wholesale because that's the quick money, right? Like that's the burn and turn money that helps fund everything else that you do for me. And so found out about selling to hedge funds. Hedge funds they're good and bad, but you can make a lot of money off of the spreads versus trying to wholesale to 12 different, regular buyers like myself that are going to kind of critique and Jew you down. And, I'm going to do what I've got to try to make the best deal I can for myself,
For sure. So very interesting. And yes, I can't wait to dive into the meat of, the hedge funds, how they play a part in the wholesaling business. But then you glazed over, your first year, you said part-time and you were making around 300 grand. And that's not typical. That's probably an outlier. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about that? I mean, especially part-time to do, 300 plus is pretty impressive. What did like your operation look like? And, so marketing, your team size. Tell me a little bit.
My team size was 0. It was just me. And I was working off of Google Sheets and a cell phone because, I'm from Mississippi. Like, I'm not smart. Okay. I'm a high school dropout. I get that. But I like to sell stuff. And so it was just me, I was hustling. So I would work, I worked my job and I was able to sell pretty much anything at any time selling myself. So even in my business, even in my job, when I was working, I was a production manager there. Well, in all honesty, I made production manager when I was 30 years old. I shouldn't have never made production manager. I sold myself into that position. I didn't know anything. I just sold myself into it. And it's the same thing on the real estate side. I just failed my way forward. And so what I would do is I would pull data and I would start calling people. So I got an RVM, a ringless voicemail system. And then I got a call rail. And I was just making calls, man. On my breaks, I was making calls. On my lunch breaks, I was making calls. I wasn't sitting in there with Joe Blow talking about what they were talking about at the water cooler. I was in there hustling on my way home, I was either making calls when I'm driving down the road or headed to go meet an appointment to try to get a deal closed. And that's what I did. On Saturdays, I was hustling. On Sundays, I was hustling after church. Like, it didn't stop. I put my AirPods in at night when me and my wife were laying down watching TV. I was actually listening to podcasts, learning more, just eating it up. And that was my routine for a long time. And that's what paid off, really. It's that consistency and that hustle, really, that made it that. I didn't need anybody else to do that. I just know what I needed to do.
Absolutely. It's, I knew there was obviously more to that, right? And what you're talking about resonates 100% with me. Reminds me of when I was first starting off. I was working at corporate world, was doing computers, loved them. I went to school for them, enjoyed them very much, had aspirations of being the top, the CTO of the company, whatever. That quickly changed after hearing Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But when I was exposed to real estate, similar like you, I'm coming home, after work, and most people are kicking back, lounging, watching TV. Well, I was sitting there studying nonstop, researching. On Sundays, I joke around about it. I was still in my 20s, so I may have been a little hungover, but I was door knocking, doing the nonstop of the what do you call it? As you mentioned, the audio books, all that. So it was literally 24. Any free time, like, it was dedicated. So, like, that's one thing I just want to point out, like, the difference between somebody who's kind of doing it as a hobby and someone who's like, hey, although you were part-time, you really also, in essence, kind of full-time. It was just focusing in another area. And I think people definitely need that type of dedication to really, if they're going to go down this path, to really make it serious, But no, I appreciate you sharing that. Again, it resonates with me, like, nonstop, always, what can we do? I remember, like you said, we had Opta Online, and I'm blowing dust off. I'm like, when's the last time we even put this thing on? And we haven't had TV since and whatnot. So, anyway, okay, so you were hustling, so that's really what it comes down to. Then you obviously made the transition. Why don't you tell us a little bit? How did you come? You obviously didn't just start off with the hedge funds. I'm sure you did a lot of wholesaling. How did the hedge funds come into play? And tell us a little bit about the beginning interaction and how you facilitated a relationship, so to speak, with them.
Yeah. So, I was doing a lot of wholesaling, and then I partnered up with Jeremy and Daniel. We started converting it over into flips. So then we started doing a ton of flips. Right. And found out, flips are great and you can make good money at flips, but oh my gosh, it's a lot of work, and even if you put people in place that are supposed to manage that, at a certain point, there's still your human factor and all of that whole dynamic. And so it's difficult. And a friend of mine actually was selling to the hedge fund. So that really comes back to network, listening to these kind of podcasts right here, paying to go hang out with people that are smarter, better, bigger than you. And so it just come out of a network of friends that I had made. And he told me about it. And I was like, holy crap, I got to try this. And so, I started working with him. We'd partner up on the deals and just dispo everything that made sense, because there's certain criteria that you have to do with hedge funds. So hedge funds, depending on who they are, and there's tons of hedge funds. Some of them are okay to work with, some of them are not. Some of them are great at first and then fall off and back and forth, right? But they'll have criteria. So maybe like a 3-1, no later than 1959 build. Some of them have to have a garage. And you just start making connections. So I started trying to connect with them on LinkedIn. So I would find a hedge fund and I'd start reaching out to them. Hey, would you want to work with us? Blah, blah. And I'm going to tell you, it's extremely difficult to get connected to a bunch of different hedge funds. Just because they have people like me or my buddy that's just pounding down their doors, because people want to work with them. The story's out. The news is out. Working with hedge funds is great at some point. And so, really, I had an in, luckily, from him. And then we just kind of partnered up and figured out splits. And so right now, what we are currently here in this office is basically an acquisition specialist. Like, all we do is pound the phones all day and we get people to agree, send them a contract over the phone or online, they sign it, and then just spit them out. Boom, boom, boom. That's kind of what we're doing. And then I allow my buddy on the back end, he's handling all the closing side. So he's handling managing inspections, managing, all the attorneys and everything else from there on out. So we're getting the contracts and then allowing him to dispo. And it's just a whole lot easier. We can specialize in what we do specialize in, which is we get deals.
Right. Absolutely. Now, can you tell me a little bit more about, like, are they like your primary buyers? Are they buying, 99% of your stuff, and then whatever they don't buy gets put out to your backup list? How's working with them compared to, the local guy that you wholesale one or two properties, your flipper or your landlord? Is it easier? Is it more complicated? It sounds like that they have strict requirements. Is it pretty streamlined? I imagine their whole process. I mean, what could you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah. So when it comes to the hedge funds, it's actually pretty streamlined. So the way it works is I have a criteria that I market to, and I market to that criteria, that type of person that owns that property. Once we get that property under contract, we send it out with the information. So we have just basically an email string that says 3-2 blah blah blah, gives them general data. We've now also built out a sheet that shows a repair budget. So we know that every hedge fund is going to come in and put new vinyl plank flooring in. So we just go ahead and budget that into the cost, the repair cost. We know that some of them are going to want granite countertops. So we go ahead and budget that, whatever. And then we understand their criteria. And so when we put it into our repair calculator, it spits out a number and it tells us, okay, Sean, you're going to have a $40,000 repair budget based on what this house is. So you need to send all this information at this number over to get it locked up under contract. And once we get it locked up under contract, we send it to the hedge fund, all that data. So we don't tell them what we got it locked up for, but we send them all the data, the information that we have. Once we send that over, you'll have a preliminary offer back. And that offer, let's just say we have a house and it's a $250,000 house, ARV, and it has to have 30,000 in repairs. All right, so we get it locked up at 200. The hedge fund comes back because they're buying at around 105 to 115% of ARV, depending on who they are. So they're coming back at say 250, because once you do over ARV, and then we've told them it needed 30 grand in repairs or whatever, that's putting it around that 250 mark, right? Okay. 240, something like that. And then what'll happen is we schedule an inspection. So the hedge fund will go over and do an inspection. Some of them are really thorough, some of them aren't so thorough, but they'll go over and do an inspection on the property, and they'll come back with a repair estimate. And if our repair estimate is correct, and the hedge fund is doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is buying properties and not Jewing the piss out of you, and most of the time they don't, but sometimes they'll try to with the repair budget, right? And then you got to kind of bicker back and forth with them. What are you talking about? There's no, you're trying to say it needs this, it doesn't need. Anyway, so sometimes you have to Jew them, a little bit, but it's not terrible. And then they come back and they give you a final offer. So you're getting this property locked up under contract, and you have a 35-day term. So by the time everything's done, you get a contract, a BC contract on the property. So I have an AB contract and I have a BC, because we're double closing everything.
Right.
Because we don't want the hedge funds to know we're making 30, 40, 60, $100,000 on the deal. Right. So we'll double close all of it. Some of them will require you to hold it for 15 days, before they'll close on it. Some of them will double close and you can use their funds. Some of them you need transactional funding. It really depends, and it varies on that per hedge fund. But once you have all of that in line, it becomes streamlined, and it's just burning and turning.
Right. Now, when you're dealing with these guys, are you telling them like, hey, they're probably expecting to get, a good amount of properties. I don't foresee them wanting to deal with, someone who's only going to pass them one or two deals for the year. It doesn't probably make sense. I could be wrong on that, but they're probably expecting the volume. That's why they're giving you the time of day. Is that accurate? Or am I wrong on that?
Some of them are, yeah. Some of them, it varies. And again, that kind of goes back to, some do not allow just any Joe Blow to get in contact with their sales reps or their purchasing reps, because they'll be inundated with junk that really doesn't meet their criteria. So a lot of times they really want to work with somebody that knows the business, understands what they're looking for, and at least understands a generic idea of how this stuff operates. So it's easier once you have the formula to go in and say, hey, look, just want you guys to understand, I've sold to XYZ hedge funds, and I understand that they buy this, this, and this. Just curious, what do you buy at? Because I actually have some deals that maybe they didn't buy because it's not in their buy box that you might, whatever, and just, it's a sales pitch to them too.
For sure. Now you mentioned, you said 105% of the average. So they're paying above. Can you tell me, is this, I mean, my guess is that they feel this is more of storing large amounts of capital in these houses more for preservation than trying to get a certain percentage of return on their money. Again, I could be wrong on that, but how else are they making sense of paying above what it's worth?
It's all cap rate. They're buying at anywhere from a 4 to a 5 cap. And that's what they're doing. So they're buying on a 4 or 5 cap versus for rent inflation. And I mean, you guys have seen it just like I have. Rent's gone up, what, 25% in the past 2 years or year and a half, whatever. I mean, they're seeing the exact same thing. So what they're doing is, realistically, ARV means nothing to them. It's all cap rate. So if you can analyze the cap rate, the hardest part is truly judging what rent rates are in a local area. You can get close. But so what we've done is we've understood that it's somewhere between 105 to 115% of ARV generally gives you a rough idea of cap rate once you start understanding the market. Now, some hedge funds are flipped hedge funds. So they're only going to buy at 85% of ARV, but they're still buying better than your average Joe Blow like me that's going to say, no, I want at least 70% or less than that. Right. These guys are buying at 85% ARV even to flip it.
Right. That's interesting. So, okay. Now let me ask you this. If, let's say someone wants to go ahead and say, hey, this sounds good. I'm doing a good amount of volume. I want to go ahead and target these guys. Do you suggest that they, it sounded like you had an in connection, but just to go on LinkedIn and just start hammering out calls? What do you think if you had to restart, let's say you didn't have that connection per se, what would you do to try to get an in with, with these hedge funds?
Yeah, man, LinkedIn's going to be the only way to go, I think, and you need to pay for that premium service and start trying to just hound somebody. And it's going to take hounding somebody until you get a response.
Just a numbers game, right? Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think they should have like an entire, or maybe just kind of, I don't want to say like a pamphlet, but almost like an electronic flyer that shows like about the company, maybe the volume they're doing, and if they're starting off, maybe have some partners that have some, history behind them that they could kind of leverage a little bit, just because they're not going to get the time of the day most likely if they're just, hey, I just attended this 5-day boot camp and let me sell you guys some properties kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I think all of that would help for sure. I've found that it was one of the hardest things for us to do is to get an in on the hedge funds.
Got it. So, okay. But I mean, once you have that could be your lifeline right there. I mean, especially if they're paying premiums.
Yeah, and I don't know how long this wave is going to last, right? So I'm just going to ride it while it happens, because in all honesty, some of these hedge funds, there's no way they're going to be able to sustain paying the money that they're paying for some of these houses. There's just no way. Yeah. I think the next 2 years we're still good. I think we still ride it. I think inventories are extremely low. We have a high influx of foreigners coming across the border every day. So what does that do? And that's eating up inventory for rentals, right? Because people have to have a place to stay. So what that's going to do is that's going to continue to drive up nicer houses rent costs, because what's happening is a lot of the immigrants that are coming across, of course, they don't have anything and they're not making great wages right off the bat. Some of them make really good, but a lot of them don't. So what they do is they eat up a lot of the low income rentals, which then pushes everybody else, the other people up. They have to go up because it's harder to find the lower dollar amount of rentals, right? That's my thought, my logic. I can't figure anything else out except for that.
Yeah. Gotcha. So, I mean, you kind of mentioned, right? Like they're kind of overpaying. And again, my take on that is that, you know, a lot of uncertainty of the economy, certain markets, and, you know, the people with the 1000x cryptocurrency and all that. I mean, I think it's kind of switched from now. I don't want to say there's a little bit of panic out there, but the rise in interest rates and then the gas issue and all that, it's definitely has a different vibe. So to me, I feel like I see that some of the money, it seems like it's going to, again, more in the preservation, not necessarily trying to get those huge upswings,
Yeah.
more of like just a hedge against inflation and everything else could
Yeah.
potentially be paying a part. So tell me a little bit more maybe about, like, you know, the process. So you do your homework, you have a house under contract, here's the, you know, the repair estimate, you shoot it out to your guy, right? I guess you got a sales contact that does the pre-evaluations and whatnot.
No. I mean, we basically just we shoot it out to the emails go out to the hedge funds, and then then you'll have, let's say, so what I've found, what I've figured out is I don't want to be in a market with just one hedge fund. If I'm in a market with just one hedge fund and I'm dependent on them, then I need to either know another way of dispoing that property, or I need to get in a market that has five. And then I'm going to market to the houses that are in the criteria for all five of those hedge funds. So it's just giving me basically five big buyers. And then once we get that property under contract, we'll send it to the hedge funds, and then we'll get offers back. So generally, you know, depending on the hedge fund, somewhere between 2 hours to 3 days before you get your offers back. You know?
Really? So you'll actually take a property and you'll blitz it out to all of them and see who gets back to you with what? Or do you have like, okay, here's our A-class buyer, we're going to give them first shot. If they don't get back to us, it's something we want or any interest, we go to the next. You literally put it out to everyone.
Put it out to every one of them. Yeah, absolutely. Now there's some criteria that we know, like we know we've got one hedge fund that if we've got a 2-car garage, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, brick on a slab in this area, they're going to pay more than anybody else. And I only send it to them because I know that's going to be the buyer for that house. You know, I understand now my buyers that I currently have, but for the most part, no, yeah, we'll send it out. Cause I mean, you know, they're going to do their quick due diligence and their quick initial offer. And then once they do their quick initial offer, then we'll get back to them and say, hey, we want to go with yours. And then we start getting into a little bit more of their due diligence to make sure it's going to meet, you know.
Gotcha. So at that point, let's just say they said this looks good on paper. Then you said they send out their inspector. And what else does the process look like? And did you say it was about 30 days that they need roughly?
35-day turn. So once I get from when I get the contract to when we close is 35 days.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Because you know, typically speaking, when we're, you know, making offers, sure, it's on an average, but you know, at certain times you have to be able to close even sooner. Is that just because of the title work that's needed, or is it literally that the hedge fund, their processes and procedures typically take that?
Their process and procedure usually takes about 25 days. Now, there are times where, like for instance, we've got 3 or 4 right now that we're selling to a hedge fund, but we need to close and hold it for 15 days because either we need to close faster or because there's requirements. So what we do on that is we get transactional funding and we go ahead and close on the property and hold it for 15 days and then turn it over from there.
Right. And that's usually for more experienced people, right? Those that are starting out looking to maybe do this with little
Don't do that.
money. Yeah, they're not going to have the stomach for that. Because especially, you know, you're willing and able to close on it. Whereas, hey, if this hedge fund doesn't work, you got other buyers lined up, or you even have the ability to rehab if you have to, or list it or rent it, etc. You know, some others may not have that ability. So but no, that's pretty awesome. So you know, let me ask you, as you mentioned, you want to focus on certain markets that have multiple buyers for, you know, multiple hedge funds. How does one go around, like, let's just say for sake of argument, because you know, when I'm wholesaling properties, it's typically to someone I already have a relationship to or whatnot, or my buyers list, if it makes it that far. I can't say that I'm around, you know, going around the neighborhood and going, oh, that's a hedge fund that's flipping that one. And how do you know where the hell they're buying and whatnot? Is that just after you have a conversation with them, or are you looking at you know?
There's a couple of different things. So you can get inside the large markets and you can pull lists of data, and that list and data, like you can pull lists out of PropStream, and PropStream is going to have you will start correlating. Okay, this is an area that they buy in, and you can do that, or you can, once you start getting in touch with the hedge funds, there's two things. One, once you figure out who the hedge fund is, sometimes you can pull that hedge fund up online and it's going to give you all the markets that they're in. Once you find out that there's a hedge fund in your area, you can generally find out all the markets that they're in. But if not, once you start talking to the sales rep, you can ask the rep. Now, there's going to be some sales reps that are local or that are market specific. And so they don't want to give you all the other markets because they are going to lose money, right? So sometimes you have to work around that too, because again, that's a human factor and selfishness, but you can figure that part out.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate. So yeah, I mean, you could probably, like you're saying, if you could find some hedge fund websites, you probably could just comb through there, see what areas that they're interested in. It's amazing amount of information that's on the internet that you could find and kind of
well, generally most of these hedge funds are going to have rentals for the most part, right? So the majority of the hedge funds are going to be rental style markets. So if that's the case, then they want to let everybody know where they have rentals so that they can keep them up. They can keep them filled.
Got it. Then you could just reverse it from that way, right? You're buying in this entity, and then you could reverse engineer.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Very cool. So have you noted, I mean, like, as far as working, you said some are better than others. Like, give me some of the benefits and drawbacks versus working with like your local, John Smith, that's, a flipper, or, your mom and pop kind of guy.
Yeah. So the benefit to working with just your regular Joe Blow down the street is once you start building that relationship with them, you pretty much know what they're going to buy. Like here locally, if I get a deal, I'm going to be like, oh, John's going to buy that. Or, Michael's going to buy that. And it's because you get that relationship, but you also truly understand what they're doing, like what their mindset is and where they're going. And so like, that's the benefit to the local buyers is you just are to your general wholesales, or once you build that relationship, you know what they're going to buy. You are fair with them, they're fair with you, and you just you knock deals out with them. With the hedge fund, in all honesty, you don't know what in the heck they're going to do. They may fly off into left field next day, right? Or they may just cut completely off. Like this fall, just about every one of the hedge funds stopped buying in November and didn't pick back up till January because they were resetting. Well, if it was a deal for John, he's not finding that many deals. I knew I could sell it to him, Right. And so that's the downside to the hedge funds, or they're so stinking volatile. You truly do not know what they're going to do.
Do they give you a heads up on that? Like if they were going to, it was just like, hey, Sean, we're not buying for the next 4 months. And you're just like, what? They didn't give you any.
That's it. Now they would trickle in a buy here and there because they had to, or like if we had any outstanding contracts that they've already signed a BC agreement on, then they would fulfill those deals. But besides that, I mean, their buy power just plummeted, man. It was tough,
Did they give any reason why? Was it just that they were trying to balance books, or they
were trying to reset for the next year is what most of them said.
Reset for next year. What is that in hedge fund talk?
Basically, I think they're trying to get all their allocations of money back lined up and in position for them to spend.
Got it.
I'm gonna say they probably hold like investor meetings and bring new investors in. I'm assuming that's what they're doing.
Gotcha. And have you seen, since they started buying again in January, have you seen this like just it's pretty steady? Has it gone up? Is it bouncing along?
No, it's wide open. Wide open. Yeah. There's so much money in the market right now. And again, I think exactly what you were saying, that there's preservation of capital, right? Because of inflation, there's so much money that's being infused into these different types of hedge funds that they have to buy property,
right?
Or they're not going to be able, they're going to lose their funding.
Right. Exactly. So that makes sense why they're like, buying these at the margins that they're buying. So I guess part of the benefits that you're going to go into is like, hey, you got this consistent buyer, they're going to pay a premium. The negative would be, well, if they decide they don't want to buy, and again, John Smith, Joe Blow down the street, well, you may not just be able to quickly turn it over to him because he might not be able to pay that much because they were paying or overpaying for that matter.
Yeah, that's right. And then your risk is, okay, one of two things. So you back out on the deal, which depending on how it's structured, may be a liability, right?
Yeah.
Or you take it down and risk all this crap that's going on in the market right now or the potential crap that's going to happen with the war and potential fear and interest rates. And you don't know if you're going to be able to dispo a house because you've paid a lot for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's pretty wild. And I think it's definitely an avenue. Like I said, we were spoken last week, it's, mentioned about this. And I was like, I've heard of, hedge funds coming in, but not really too much. You ever hearing people wholesaling out to hedge funds, which is really awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. Sure, we can dive in a lot further when we have more time. But I guess anything you want to wrap up with, I know you got a lot of things going on as far as education wise or whatever. If you want to share with the viewers, how they can get a hold of you and what kind of event you got.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So they can get a hold of me through Facebook, Sean O'Rourke. They can Instagram is bearded_investor. TikTok is bearded_investor Sean, SEAN. And I'm pumping content out every day. I'm literally trying to put something out every day, different kinds of free content. And then we have a coaching course that teaches somebody that's a newbie how to wholesale if they're interested in doing some wholesaling and making some quick cash. And then also, people can partner with us. So if you have a deal in a market, man, we can dispo that thing to the hedge funds. But we also have the course where it's called 90 Days to Escape Your 9 to 5. And basically it's soup to nuts on how to do that. And then it also has a few other things in there, pretty cool things where you can save some money on some different affiliate links. And then we have a Podio. So we built out our own Podio system to manage the influx of leads. Because I think we're sending out, I think Jeremy need to correct me, but it's about 100,000 texts a month. And we're getting somewhere between 23 to 25 to 35 leads a day, depending on, if everything's operational. Of course you have your issues and stuff, but if everything's operational, everything's clicking along like it's supposed to, it should be around 23 to 35 leads a day. And so we had to have a system to be able to capture all of this influx of data that we're bringing into our system. And so we built out this Podio and spent way too much money, but it's highly worth it for us. But what we've done now is we've packaged that Podio system up and discounted it because we've already created the monster for other people to be able to buy at a little bit cheaper rate. So that's something also we do, sell that Podio, that CRM. And it can do anything from realtors, because it's great for realtors all the way to investors and anything in between. We use it for our commercial system and all. So
yeah, absolutely. Automation is key. I don't particularly use Podio just because of my technical background. Before Podio existed, I had something else developed that's been, patched on and recreated over the years, and we're just kind of set on that. But interestingly enough, you talk about the automation, which we're trying out some other platforms, and you're almost in shock with like what's possible with technology these days and incorporating with texting and emailing and what you could automate. It's mind-boggling, man. It's pretty powerful. Like when I saw the power to, I'm just sitting, I go, oh my God, I was telling you, I almost had a heart attack. I'm like, this just freed up like hours of work. I almost was, like you said, in shock. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But it's definitely stuff.
It's crazy, man. And really that's when you truly start building a business that can operate without you if you needed it to.
Absolutely. That's what you're all striving for. So, Hey, Sean, I appreciate it, man. Awesome stuff. And definitely something we'll talk more about. Sean O'Rourke, everyone, check him out. He's a great guy. He's got a lot of stuff that he's talking about on his Facebook wall, and a lot of info to share with you guys. Check it out for sure. And we'll do another one soon. I appreciate it, Sean.
Cool, man. Thanks.